hurt people. And when you have not gone in and done your own healing work to feel your pain, like, it's very easy to perpetuate that pain upon other people.
On the second day, I started to feel like an ice pick penetrating my heart. Like a pain, like so deep. And I was just like, fuck that. Isn't meditation supposed to help?
Okay, if I do this like inner healing work, trauma work, shadow work, and I like go into all my demons and all of my like,
I don't want to.
There will be another side. Like there will be also this increased capacity to experience pleasure. So
every one of us are capable of doing harm or sharing love. Mm-hmm. Always. Mm-hmm. And the decision is within us.
Because when a woman's vulva is aroused, like, she becomes engorged. That is,
I've seen it.
That is like, we also
like,
have erectile tissue.
It's like a flower.
Yes, it literally blossoms.
Opens.
Like, we literally blossom. Gain tools like the wheel of consent to ask for what we want, to communicate what feels good, how it could feel better.
So, Haley, here we are after perhaps 3 months about discussing many things about relationships, the masculine, the feminine. And here we are recording our first and amazing dialogue.
Sí.
Do you remember that we met at the Pussy Palace?
We did meet at the Pussy Palace.
Were you aware
fitting.
that
That's fitting. Yeah, that is called the Pussy Palace. Yeah,
it's called the Pussy Palace because there are like 4.
And I think it was the first time I went to the Pussy Palace, or maybe the second time. But yes.
It was, I think, New Year's Eve or Christmas.
Christmas, maybe. Yeah.
And my friend Anna invited me because she told me that she was throwing a party for the shelter, like the orphans.
Sí.
And I told my dad that I'm going to Christmas because we're going to help the orphans from Tepoztlán. And I came, and it was every foreign, that lived in Tepoztlán. And I was like, where are the kids? And she was like, what kids? We are the orphans,
Es cierto.
Yeah. So we talked about and we connected, and I told you about my film, and you told me about your life's mission, about sharing tools of improving sexuality. What's the title that you have now?
For this talk, for this podcast?
No, for your title, like, I am Haley, I am a...
Okay. Well, I'm a certified embodiment and somatic sexuality guide.
How does anyone get that job?
Right? Oh my gosh. I feel like I actually just did a video about my credentials because I think it is important, when anyone claims a title, like, okay, how did you get that title? And I have a whole list of, certifications that I've done and people that I've studied with. I started studying embodiment 20 years ago and was also doing more like social justice work around sexuality and with a women's shelter and with youth and with the sexual wellness advocacy team on my college campus. And then I went more into the study of it and my own healing. But really, I feel like what really qualifies me to speak about these things is not my certifications or my trainings, but really my personal experience. Before I started, what really got me personally started on the road of embodiment and somatic sexuality was when I was 18. I had a realization while I was drawing. I kept drawing these floating heads because the art was part of how I just processed the difficulty in my life at that time, And I kept drawing these floating heads, and I realized one day that at the time I was actually addicted to drugs and alcohol. I was in an abusive relationship, and I realized that I was that floating head because I literally had no sensation in my body from the neck down. And so I was like, that's bizarre. And it definitely hasn't always been that way. And I literally just was numb.
Like there was a time that you tried to feel your body and were like, fuck, I don't
Like,
feel
I was
nothing.
like, nada, no.
Whoa.
And so then I began to study these practices, and I was very blessed to live in a place where in Eugene, Oregon, where there was a lot of teachers and resources to do somatic healing work. And so as I began to go into my body and really inhabit my body, quickly I began to be able to feel, but then my body was completely wrought with pain for many, 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 many years. And this pain took many different forms, including a chronic pain condition in my vulva where I had a level 10 pain for 5 years. It was excruciating and
But
horrendous.
okay, so you had this coming back to your body, and then you realize
Then as I,
was 10 pains of leading with what you discovered, like coming back to your body.
yeah, exactly. So it's like I was completely disassociated. Then I came back in, and my body was like, ah! And I'm like wow.
No, leave to your head.
And I was like, okay, that's why I was completely disconnected, because I didn't want to feel the pain, right? And then that's also why I was turning to drugs and alcohol, and I think why a lot of people, have that experience of, using whatever it is to numb the pain, right? And it's completely understandable until we have the tools really to deal with that pain and to be with that pain. And actually, and it was a process for me of listening to my pain and what is okay, because I couldn't, nothing, and any of the doctors said that there was nothing wrong, like it was really like I had to just be with the pain, listen to the pain, begin to dialogue with the pain, let the pain teach me about how to live better in my body and about why it was there, connected to many different experiences of sexual violence that I'd gone through and, boundaries that had been crossed. And yeah, so that's really what I feel is my ultimate credential of the title of, embodiment and somatic sexuality guide is just going through my own real transformation of pain to pleasure and how I've been able to do that. So,
Are you aware that they say that pain and pleasure activate the same part of the brain?
yes, I am aware of that.
And we biologically are more tended to seek pleasure and avoid pain.
Claro, sí.
That's what I learned in my Vipassana retreat, like a 10-day silent retreat. And it's like a Buddhistic way of experiencing life.
Yeah.
And they tell you that you just have to be here meditating like from 4:30 a.m. to 9 p.m. and just being aware of the breath and the body. Like that was one of my first experience to embody myself, to come back to the body. But it wasn't the first one. I want to talk about the first one. But in Vipassana, they say about like if you feel pleasure, like just come back to the body. If you feel pain, like don't judge, don't seek pleasure, don't avoid pain, just be. As if the self was something that does not seek pleasure and does not avoid pain. Do you remember this Vietnamese from Vietnam, Vietnamita?
Vietnamese, sí, sí,
Vietnamese
sí.
monk that in a strike he burned himself. I read the article of the journalist that was witnessing that, and he was like, that dude just calcinated in front of me and he didn't scream. Not one, He just stood there on fire while the body just... Can you imagine a level of perception for just be open to the pain and the pleasure, like or none?
Sí. Well, I think what's fascinating about that is like what you just said around a level of being open to the pleasure and the pain, and I think that this is what I've learned, that can help us embrace our pain, is that actually when we can lean in to feeling our pain and experiencing our pain and not shutting down and just being present with it, that opens the same doorways to being able to be open to more pleasure.
Isn't that weird?
Because if we numb out to the pain, we're also numbing our capacity to experience pleasure. And so this is, I love this because I think as a concept that is very real, it can help people, it can help the pain be more attractive, like, okay, if I do this like inner healing work, trauma work, shadow work, and I like go into all my demons and all of my,
I don't want to.
there will be another side, like there will be also this increased capacity to experience pleasure. So yes.
Do you think it can work the other way around? Like the more pleasure you feel, the more openness you're giving to pain. Like if it was like a buckle, like
honestly, yes, because I mean that is the whole thing. And I love Martin Prechtel's work. I don't know if you're familiar with Martin Prechtel, his book Grief and Praise, that is this concept around disconnecting from our grief, we also disconnect from our ability to praise life. And in terms of healing trauma, like as you're saying, pleasure is honestly the best way that we can heal trauma, because pleasure regulates our nervous system and we get a reparative experience. So for instance, sexually, when we've been through a lot of pain or boundary crossing or just things that happened that we were not a full yes to, then we need to have a pleasurable, safe experience in the body to begin when we turn also towards pleasure and towards cultivating pleasure, and not just only being with the pain, but like doing active practices to cultivate pleasure that regulate the nervous system and help us feel safe. That does automatically heal the pain. But to your point around like when we go deeper into pleasure and opening, does that mean that we also can experience more pain? And I personally have experienced that, because as I've gone more into opening and to life in all of its capacity, and to love and to success and to abundance and to all of these things, there's always the opposite. And I think it's just part of one of the laws of creation, right? Is this duality, and that as we expand in one, we expand in the other, and we're expanding in our capacity for both. And for me, knowing, because at this last year I've been in a very deep dark night of the soul where I've experienced horrendous amounts of pain.
Like
and
physically in your body.
Physically in my body, emotionally, spiritually, on all levels.
Fuck, there was pain
on all
everywhere.
levels.
Everywhere.
All
dimensions.
All dimensions. At the same time.
Where is that pain? Where is that pain?
And I had to just be like, okay, I know how this goes. This is my next level of like opening completely, fully to the pain, like giving myself to it, feeling it, not bypassing, not drinking it away, not smoking it away, like feeling it and knowing that there will be this other side that will come of more pleasure.
But I think it's like a roller coaster, right? Because I've been in many, many pleasurable moments in my life and many painful moments,
See.
And we talked about this, like what you're saying reminds me of the image of the Sacred Heart. Like the Jesus that it's like pointing his fingers up and pointing to the heart, and it's like a bright heart full of thorns. The first time I noticed, like, that was the first time that I came to my body. It was 2017. And after doing many ayahuasca ceremonies, I felt depressed. I felt like fear of dying. I had panic attacks, And then I watched this documentary that is called Samadhi, the illusion of the self. So I saw that documentary and it disarmed me, like all of my tools, all of the knowledge I've gathered. I didn't know who was I if I could name it. Like, I am a higher soul, higher self. I'm a soul, eternal. Like, everything I identified myself with was through a concept, elevated or, but it was a concept. So I wrote him, and I flew to Canada with the director,
Yes.
and I was like, dude, I want to try this thing you call meditation. But because at the time I meditated, but like half an hour or 30 minutes. And in that moment, on the second day, I was like, the instructions, he said it just once during 8 days. Okay, so we're just gonna sit. Don't try to control your breath. Just notice the cold going in and the warmth going out. Focus on the sensation, not of the thought that you're breathing, just the sensation. If your mind goes away, just come back to the breath. So I did. On the second day, I started to feel like an ice pick penetrating my heart. Like a pain, like so deep. And I was just like, fuck that. Isn't meditation supposed to help? Aren't we here to feel better or to feel elated on something? And I started to feel this pain. And I talked to him, like in the recesses, and I was like, Dan, so I'm feeling this great amount of pain in my heart, you know? So what should I do? And he was like, he was looking at me like if I was going to be able to discover something important. And he was like, just come back to the breath. Feel it. Just come back to the breath. On the next day, I entered my first samadhi experience. I was feeling the pain, and suddenly I felt that my nose was like 1 meter away, and I was breathing, but I was the breath breathing itself. But there was no one that was breathing. I didn't have a trace of my name, my body, nothing. It was like experience eternal, calmless, with no one there. There was no I, you know? And that moment is leading me to try to direct the film that took me 7.5 years to write, and share this. What the fuck is love? What the fuck is the pain? What the fuck is existence? Like this healing process, like sometimes I don't know if I'm going forwards or backwards.
Sí. Sí, sí, sí.
But at the end, I think it's like realize that life is painful, life is pleasurable. Like we are meant to feel pleasure, even when we take a dump. It can feel pleasurable.
True. True, true.
Or eat or. So, I would like to say that I honor our connection really so much, because I think we have met each other really authentic way.
Sí.
We know many colors of ourselves. We've laughed together, we cried together.
Sí.
And I also would like to mention our way of expanding our intimacy. And I just want to say that the experience we had, the exploration, I felt it like really amazingly, lovingly honest. Like I've never been with no one that told me that the only thing they needed is to be touched and to hear that they are safe. And that was it, our exploration. And it was like beautiful, you know. And sometimes, and you explain me, I would like for you to explain me again the will of consent
Yeah.
and the importance of feeling safe to have pleasure.
Yes. Yes, I also honor our connection, Tielo, very much. And yes, the Wheel of Consent is amazing resource that was created by Betty Martin, who is a somatic sex coach based out of Seattle, Washington. She's amazing. I have so much respect and love for her and her work. And what's amazing is that anyone can find out about the Wheel of Consent and how to practice it on her website. If you just look up Betty Martin Wheel of Consent, it's she has a bunch of videos that explain the whole practice. And I'm actually still learning. I by no means have the ability to share about the full context of her work, so I want to point people to the source. But what I know about the exploration is really one of the key components that she teaches people is around separating this concept of giver and receiver, because in order to actually fully receive and fully give, we need to separate these things.
Right.
Of what does it mean to be the giver? What does it mean to be the receiver? And when you are in the position of the receiver, to really have the space to ask for exactly what you want. And as the giver, to then ask, like, is this, am I getting it? And to check in, and this practice of checking in and being like, so say if I were like, touch my arm like right here, and you'd touch right there and be like, and then you would check in and you would say like that.
Am I doing again? Do you want
No,
softer?
actually like a little bit more pressure. More pressure.
Pressure.
That's too much.
Okay,
Like a
okay.
little like in between. Yeah, like that. And actually don't go quite as far down. Just like stop actually here and just go from here to here. That's perfect.
All right.
And then I can really sink into receiving, because
Into feeling pleasure
Into
without the
feeling
worrying
it,
about
of, like-
the awkwardness.
and this is where somatics comes in, because when we like actually are present in our body, you can feel, for me, I can start to feel like zones of my body that are like, no, I'm not open to touch here. I am open to touch here or here. And then listening to like, okay, when I receive that touch, is that, or no, it's, and it becomes this investigation.
Is there a dimension where it stops being mental? Like it's just bodily? Like just listen to the body, but first...
To me, that's not mental. Like it's, I'm listening. I'm actually listening to my body.
Okay.
I'm communicating with words, but I'm not like in my mind. Because mental to me would be like, should I ask for this or should I not? Or like, what is he going to think if I ask for this? Like that's mental. Like this is a pure experience of actual embodiment and just checking in, like, is this the way your body wants to be touched, or is it like this? Or it's, yes, we're dialoguing, but the actual practice is one of like extreme presence in the body.
All right. Because it's
and safety, I just want to go back
awkward.
to, because I want to touch on safety and the reason why it's so important, first to establish dialogue. And this goes back to, we are going to talk about the three main things I want to touch on around like what I've discovered in the realm of sex and intimacy that can really help people to expand their capacity to give and receive pleasure and experience intimacy with other people. And one of the key components for creating safety is around communication. And most of us were not taught at all how to communicate about sex, about what we want, about what we don't want, about where our boundaries are, about what our desires and fantasies are. Like, none of us are really taught how to speak about this. And if we can't talk about it, it's very hard to experience safety. Like, I think many people go into sexual encounters with this kind of like blind, like, let's just see how this goes. And there's automatically, especially if you've experienced any kind of trauma, which I feel like I feel that
I would say like
everybody, almost
100%
everybody has
in the
experienced
world, some kind of trauma.
some kind of sexual trauma where you
Psychologically,
were
yes.
not like a full yes, where you were not a full yes to whatever it was that was happening. And whenever we've experienced those experiences where there was some part of us that was not a full yes to what was happening, that part then starts to get scared. And it's like, is that going to happen again? Like, am I going to be, in this scenario again where something is happening that I'm not a full yes to, and I don't have my voice and I don't have the ability to communicate that? And so that part, like, one of my teachers and main mentor, Sayeda Desilets, talks about how that is our slowest part. That we all have a part of us como el parte más lento que vive adentro. It's like our slowest part
To feel safe.
to feel safe. And so we have to connect with our slowest part, the part of us that feels scared. And it's like, okay, entering any kind of intimate or sexual connection, like, what is my slowest part? What does that part of me need to feel safe? Because in order for I think, men to get hard, for women to get wet, for people of any gender or sexual orientation to become aroused, arousal happens when we feel safe.
I think that arousal may happen like for example, if you've ever experienced a one night stand, and
Sí.
you didn't know any about this will of consent, like you can get aroused by someone and then suddenly come back to his place or your place and whatever.
Yeah.
But in my experience, it can happen, but it's like shallow relationship.
Yes.
For example, I used to get really anxious about knowing how to make a woman orgasm.
Uh-huh.
Like I remember one of my first girlfriends, I was giving her a blowjob like for, I don't know, like 1 hour, and I didn't accomplish nothing. And she was like, dude, could you just come and hug me? Because like nothing's gonna happen,
Yeah.
And my ego was shattered because I felt like less of a man.
Sí.
And I called my friend and we went to play pool.
Yeah.
And I cried, like I was like, I couldn't. I don't know where the clitoris is, friend. I don't know how to. I don't know shit.
Yeah.
And that anxiety of wanting to a woman to have a good time, to have an orgasm,
Yeah.
haunted me until I discover like the two key components, that it's building a safe place
Yeah.
and having fun.
Yes, having fun.
And just
Play.
be curious, like with the
Yes.
beginner's mind.
Yes.
Like it's like, don't assume, because all women, like you wouldn't believe, like you are not a man, and perhaps many penises like the same things, but each woman is so different, like whatever worked with the last one, like like, oh yeah, baby, I know how this goes, and I'm like, stop doing that, and I'm like, what?
I've totally had that. Like, yeah, like having some sexual experience with a man. I'm like, he's clearly playing out like whatever his last partner liked or worked for her. That's like not working for me, And because so many men, oh my goodness, so many men like don't ask. They don't ask. Like, what do you want?
Yes.
What do you want? Like, and maybe some women, like there was a time where I didn't really know, and it was a beautiful time actually where I had a partner who did ask a lot, and so I could explore because I was like, I don't really know, let's see, like, and then it can be
Like,
fun
could
and
you
it can be an
tickle me
exploration.
here,
like yes,
just...
but I want to go back because I think that like always to play the devil's advocate, because there could be people like, well, I feel turned on when there's danger, right? Like, because I think there can be this arousal when we're in
or attracted to pain.
or attracted to pain, like, and absolutely, like arousal can happen in like kind of a dangerous scenario, and I think that happens a lot with like why people cheat or why they betray their partners. Like there's this kind of element of danger that is adrenaline that like is sexy, but oftentimes what I've found and what I've experienced in those scenarios that maybe are more dangerous, where there's not like full safety, or there's not full consent, or where there's not integrity, where there's like maybe our genitals are a yes, but our heart and our mind is like a no, that is not okay. And if we go ahead and we go through with that sexual encounter, like usually we end up regretting it. Or like for me, you know, when I've gone into those things, then my body is in pain afterwards, or, you know, something like that. And so I think we can create those scenarios that feel like dangerous or edgy in a safe container.
Yes.
You know, and so it's
Yes.
like, okay, how do we
Yes.
actually, it's like a both
That's
and,
exactly-
you know,
that's exactly-
where there's integrity, where there's consent, where we're not like betraying or hurting anybody, but like, and then we can play out the scenario, but like
Yes.
with safety.
Yes, like fantasy or role playing or whatever. But that's what I've encountered, because in my safely trying to hold space for a sexual connection, many times I've encountered the animal part. You know,
Yes.
like a woman that wants to be dominated, and she feels safe enough. It's in consent,
Yeah.
and she's feel safe enough for her to put, like, it's amazing. I just have to say this.
It is.
It's amazing when a woman grabs your arm and puts it on her neck,
Sí.
you know, and she's watching you, and you're like, you know, like,
Sí, sí,
we are
sí.
doing this together, you know, in consent, in safe place.
Sí.
It's with love.
Sí. And then it can be actually a reparative experience. And I love BDSM. I really believe that BDSM, you know, specifically has a very powerful ability to heal trauma, you know, because when we can actually replay scenarios where maybe in the past it was a non-consensual scenario, like where there was a violation that happened, but we can replay that in a scenario where we're actually safe, and where there's consent, and where we have a safety word, and we know if we tell that person to stop, they will stop. And like, you know, then it can actually, like, there is this incredible hardwiring.
I think it would be like the shadow of the sexuality, you know, like the animal part or the fantasy or nasty part that many of us are not used to express, because we live in this moral world that we have clothes, you know, and we're respectful, like, hi, good afternoon, and, you know, and it's no way that you're going to go to the supermarket guy and like, hey, would you like to struggle me a little? would you like some spanking?
Yeah.
Because I think it is within us, but it's like the persona, the ego that divides what people tell you how to be, or acceptance,
Yeah.
because we never want rejection. So if you, since you were a child, wanted a hug, and you say something, and you didn't get a hug,
Yeah.
and you was like, fuck, like, I got a, you know, like a punishment or whatever. I don't like pain. I like pleasure. So I won't arrive when I was like 6 years old naked to the living room in front of a party, you know, like, shame on you. Like, I was like, what the fuck? you know?
Oh, right? Yes, yeah.
You know, and it's like, okay, they grounded me and they didn't give me a hug, so I won't be sexual.
Yes, yes.
And that all of this of consent, of, I think we're going through of a like restructuring relationships
Yes.
between men and women, that for me it's like there is a polarity that it's masculine, and there is a polarity that it's feminine, and within there are all the colors of the rainbow, you know, all the consonants. I don't speak much of that, but because it's not my experience, I've questioned myself if I'm gay,
Yeah.
and I'm not interested in, like, I really love women, you know.
Yeah. Were you gonna say
Go.
something else? Because
Yes.
I was like,
Go,
I
go,
would
go,
love
go,
to.
go.
I would love to touch on this point that you're making around socialization, like socialization around sexuality, and this denial maybe of these desires or urges that are more animalistic, or, you know, play around domination or different things, submission, and I think a lot of people are having very like vanilla sex because they've been socially conditioned by religion,
Wait,
by society.
what is vanilla sex?
I'll get there. By many things to like not explore sexually in the way that they actually want and they actually desire. And I think it leads people to like whatever is suppressed or denied, it comes out sideways, And so I think there's been this massive repression of sexuality because of, mainly because of religion, because of colonization, because of patriarchy, because of many different things, that sexuality has been suppressed, has been deemed as bad, as wrong, as sinful. The body is bad, is wrong, is sinful, which is, I think, why we're seeing this extreme porn that is coming out that is really, to me, is very sad, and there's a lot of great porn. I'm pro like sex positive, consent based porn where the porn stars are paid well and it's all consensual and good and everybody's happy. But then there's this whole other industry of porn that is very twisted and very dark and is very not consensual, and like where the women, like, because when a woman's vulva is aroused, like she becomes engorged. That is,
I've seen it.
That is like, we also
Like,
have
visually,
erectile
it's
tissue.
like a flower.
Yes, it literally
just
blossoms.
opens.
Like we literally blossom.
I
And
just noticed that like 5 years ago.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
It's amazing.
But when you look at so much of this like very dark, twisted porn, the women are not aroused at all. They're completely faking it. And there's something called limbic resonance. So that's where, like, if I'm in a deep meditative state, I am going to transmit that meditative state to the people around me because we resonate and we influence each other limbically. And so when people are watching porn, where people are performing, where the men are on drugs, where the women are on drugs, where nobody's actually where they're just performing and it's not fully consensual and it's not fully, it's a performance. It's not an actual loving, healing, beautiful, pleasure-filled experience. People who are watching that are getting limbically imprinted by an example of sexuality that is false, which does not actually help them to experience more pleasure in their body. And I have clients, who are addicted to porn and who have a hard time becoming aroused and have a hard time, connecting intimately with a partner because like the porn has twisted them and twisted their sexuality and has disconnected them from their bodies and their true pleasure. So I think when we can shed, and this is how I work with people within the embodied psychosexual method, is first to dismantle the beliefs that sexuality is bad, is sinful, is wrong, even deep down there, experiences that we've had it as a child, naked, coming for a hug, and then we were ashamed, or maybe we were self-pleasuring and we were like shamed, or, really go back and like unwind any experiences that we've had.
It's not about actually learning, but unlearn.
Unlearn that. What do I actually want to believe about sexuality? What's actually real? And then doing somatic practices to like rewire that body-brain connection, and then give people tools to actually speak to what do I want. And as you said, like it's very vulnerable actually to ask for what we want, because we maybe asked for what we wanted in the past and we didn't get that, And so how can we, first of all, make sure that we're with safe people that actually love us and actually respect us and actually want to give us pleasure and actually want to receive what our desires are and actually want to give us that and want to celebrate that and are in their own agency enough to say, actually, I'm not available to do that. If they're not available to do that. And for us to be emotionally mature enough to like not take that as rejection, but to be like, okay, great. Thank you for your no. Like, you're not available to do this. Like, what are we available to do? Like, how can we bring play and curiosity to like what we're both a yes to, and expand the playground of what's possible within sexual and intimate connection so that we can feel more fulfilled and not need to turn to, cheating on our partner for that quick fix fling, like something exciting and different, or porn, or these things that actually are destructive and don't bring more pleasure.
I think that the spinal cord that unites divine love with lust is desire. You know, I once was with a woman I just met like here in this non-touristic area. She just walking out and I was like, hey, how are you? And she began to cry. We connected.
Yeah.
And she was at a moment that we like connected sexually and she wanted for me to put a condom. And I was like, I know it will sound awkward, but in this time of my life, it doesn't make sense to put a plastic on my penis. You know, like I rather not going that far and keep exploring other areas than to put a plastic. So we explored, and we were in a road trip, and we were exploring in between meditations and kissing and other areas.
Yeah.
But in the morning, I felt so horny, you know, that my first instinct was use all your manipulative tools that you've got to her to open her legs. I wake up with that horniness, you know?
Yeah.
Like I woke up and I was like, no, I'm not gonna, but I was so horny, dude. Like I just want to penetrate, you know? Like I got in this stage of exploring that I just needed that.
Yeah.
So I made a decision and I just went to the bathroom and I thought about masturbating and I was like, dude, what the fuck? What the fuck is desire? Why do you feel the urge to masturbate or to penetrate a woman? So I didn't masturbate, I didn't penetrate her, but I went out and write. You know, that's my biggest therapist. And I was like, dude, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And then she came out and we talked about it. And I told her I was about to just try to shove it in, you know, like to go beyond your limits, but I didn't. And we spoke about me understanding why a man or a woman could feel that desire and perhaps not have a tool as writing, as expressively, creatively, the energy like you're, you know,
Yeah.
and just not having any tool, but to just let the instinct, the animal instinct. And the funny thing is that her name was the same in a woman as the guy that I remembered that I was sexually abused when I was like 6.
Wow.
It was so weird. And we were speaking about, you know, like we were speaking about not having shame of our sexuality, but obviously there's like this boundary or not. Because in the ayahuasca journey that I had, that I remembered, like 4,000 K when I was little, being sexually penetrated by an adult, I cried like 25 years of not telling anyone, like so hard. But at the end, I saw him. It was not a family member. I don't want to say anything more, but when I saw him in ayahuasca, he had a look on his face, like watching me like, now you know how it feels. And I was like, fuck. Is it possible that reincarnation exists? Is it possible that in another life I was the abuser? And it's like just karma, like we have to experience from both sides. And I started to cry. And I started to cry and ask forgiveness for everyone in every manifestation, in every life, in every timeline that I have hurt with my thoughts, with my words, or with my actions. You know, I felt like, fuck, like hurting another really hurts, you know? And that's one of the reasons that I want to put out my film, Corrente.
First of all, regardless of if that was karma or not, or like whatever, however the universe works, like I just want to say I'm sorry that you experienced that violation, and that within what I've learned is within my own processing of my own sexual abuse and trauma, is there's a process of like how to really be real with like the pain, the pain that is to be violated sexually. I believe is really the deepest pain that we can experience as humans, and to be real about that pain, and also to know that this trauma can turn into my treasure. Like that this, even though I've what's worked for me is really knowing like this experience does not define me. Yes, this is something that I've been through, but it does not define who I am, because I truly believe that there is a part of us that is whole and complete, and that can never be touched or tainted by anything that we experience in this life. You could call it the soul, you could call it the higher self, you could call it our essence, our true essence, but that our true essence is whole and complete and can never be hurt or tainted by any of the experiences in this lifetime. And then there's always that duality of like, and we're also human in the body, and going through these kinds of violations affects us deeply. And to be real about the effects of them, and also like what tools we can cultivate to bring safety and to bring healing, because healing is possible. And for me, and how I work with people, the first step of healing is really to acknowledge the pain, to acknowledge the violation, to feel it, to feel the angers of the feelings of anger and grief and sadness, and that is a crucial part of the process to actually getting to a point of eventually being able to forgive, to overcome. And first, I just want to say I really want to thank you for speaking up vulnerably and sharing about your experience, because I feel it's a very damaging and hurtful assumption that a lot of people carry, that men do not experience sexual trauma, because that is not true. There's like this kind of ethos out there that's like, this is something that only women experience, or that only women go through. And that is not true. People of all gender identities, men, trans, anyone, goes through sexual trauma and sexual abuse. And I think it is so important, especially in these times, that more people who are not female speak up about their experiences of sexual trauma. So thank you for sharing that.
Yes, I was ready. I had a meditation in the morning and I was like, fuck it, like, I am ready. Because you're totally right. Like, in my journey, when I was actually including this scene of my memory as a part of my film, I began to speak about the scene. And then, for example, I met this director from California, from Los Angeles, in Morelia, through a friend. And then she was like, oh, I've done so many music videos. And I was like, I'm creating a film. I have like a storyboard. And he was like, how many cards do you have? And I was like, I have like 120. Oh, you need at least 700 for a storyboard. Bring it. Let me see them. And I was like, fuck that. I'm not going to show you my most arthrotherapeutical piece that I've been doing for 7 years and a half.
Yeah.
So I said like, no. And then we started talking and I went through that scene.
Yeah.
And he was like, dude, don't tell me about sexual abuse, all right? I know about that shit, you know?
Yeah.
And then I felt like my mess was my message. Like I listened to him, and my story, it's like one of, you know, and his story is like, I don't know, like 70. He went to a fucked up childhood.
Yeah.
But at the end, he cried. I held space,
Yeah.
and at the end, I was like, I'm here for you, brother. And then he told me, like, if your movie is about that, you have 100% of my support. From being a dickhead, and then we connected about this vulnerability
Yeah.
that I think I've healed enough. And for me, when you heal something in that, it's when you can tell the story without crying.
Yes. So
You know,
true.
like
So true.
the first time I began to tell my family or my friends about that, I cried and I cried. And,
Yes.
and then you start to accept and forgive and love and know that
Yeah.
I could be the rapist, like the villain and the hero exist within all of us.
True.
We all can do us so much harm as we want to,
True.
or share so much love and tenderness as we like to. Just it's like acknowledging that we are fucking powerful, to the left or to the right,
Yes.
and consent.
Yes. Well, I think that's really powerful point. Like it specifically was speaking about, your experience with this woman and almost that desire surfacing in you to what you could almost say like rape her, like,
Yes,
violate,
the thought,
violate her boundaries and just push through, after also having experienced rape and sexual violation. And this like,
where's the line of the good or the bad, because
well, I just want to speak to like, I absolutely think it's bad to sexually violate anyone. And I feel very confident in saying that's bad and that's wrong and it's never okay and it's never going to be okay.
Okay.
And what's important so that we don't become the perpetrator or the perpetuator of violence is for all of us to do our inner healing work and to go into our own traumas, because I absolutely believe that hurt people hurt people. Hurt people hurt people. And when you have not gone in and done your own healing work to feel your pain, like it's very easy to perpetuate that pain upon other people, which then in turn causes you more pain, because I think we are all connected. And when we inflict pain on anybody else,
ancestral pain that you speak about.
Yes, that's a whole different topic, but it's a different episode. But ancestral pain, intergenerational trauma is real. But I think that what is beautiful about, these subjects that we're passionate about around like Tantra, consciousness, awakening to consent and pleasure and healing and turning our trauma to our treasure and using creativity as, to me, is the most powerful medium to do this alchemical work, and that you had that writing practice that you could go to and be like, you know what, I'm going to be conscious, establishing a meditation practice.
How to handle the emotions, like I'm feeling like within me, like,
yes.
Do I have to play the djembe? Do I have to write?
Like
do I have to draw?
How to channel them,
yes,
in a creative medium instead of like
respectful manner.
Exactly.
So, how would you wrap all of this talk?
I think we like this is. I love this. This is a good exercise in memory. So, to try to wrap up everything that we spoke about in this podcast, in this YouTube, would be, I think we started with talking about pain, and really
And pleasure, the
how
relationship on the brain,
yes, pain to pleasure, and
and
really
pleasure to pain.
exactly how
You know,
but you can't interrupt me if you want me to remember.
no. Okay,
'Cause I'm
okay, okay,
like,
okay.
I
No, no,
won't
no. I
remember
just
the
want to
stream
say
if you keep
one more
interrupting
thing.
me.
One more thing. I just want to say that I love Alan Watts, and in one talk of him, he speaks about if someone took you a photo of your face while you are orgasm,
Yeah.
and you would see your photo printed, you wouldn't know if someone is hurting you or giving you pleasure. You know, like
It's true. It's very true. It's very true. Yeah. Yeah.
okay, I will shut up now. Wrap it up.
All right. So, from pain to pleasure, when we shut down the pain, we shut down our pleasure. Then we talked about how it's so important to cultivate safety, and being able to gain tools like the wheel of consent to ask for what we want, to communicate what feels good, how it could feel better, to ask somebody, is this what you want, not what you want, communicate, check in, greatly increases the possibilities for pleasure, especially when we can bring play and curiosity into that arena, as well as how important it is to shed any of the social, cultural, religious concepts that we've had around sexuality that have told us that it's bad, wrong, shameful on any level, because these kinds of concepts contribute to us having vanilla sex, which I would say vanilla sex is just sex where nobody's talking to each other. You're just like going straight for penetration. There's not enough foreplay. Like nobody's really expressing their deeper desires or fantasies. You're not playing with other ways of exploring pleasure. Like vanilla sex is just like go straight for penetration and you're done. Like it's like boring, right?
Okay.
So in order to like expand the possibilities, to, incorporate, we talked about like BDSM and, how our desire maybe for something that is dangerous or out of the box, we can meet that need in a way that we feel safe, in a way that is in integrity and we're not hurting other people. Consent and is consensual. And I just want to speak, I didn't really get to speak to this, but this is something I feel very passionate about in terms of sexuality and integrity. And what I was taught and what I practice and believe is very essential is for us all to really get to the place where before we enter into any kind of sexual engagement, to make sure we are a full yes with our 4 centers. So we have our sexual center, we have our heart center, we have our mind, and then we have our spirit, soul, consciousness, higher self, however you want to say. And so when we are making any decision, oftentimes we might feel like a yes in one of those centers, but not in all 4 centers. So for instance, we might be a yes to connect sexually with somebody. Like intellectually it makes sense, like, oh, they're a good match, like we're a good match for each other financially or this or that, but our heart is a no and our genitals are a no. But if we go ahead with that, oftentimes I think that's why things end up in divorce or something like that, or we end up hurting people, because if we're not a full yes, if it's not within integrity on all centers of our body, like we should not go through with it. So that's just a side note. But then we talked about how important it is to, yes, create safety in any kind of sexual environment and listen to our slowest part. So the part of us that might be scared, afraid, and what does that part need to feel safe to open up? And then we talked about how sexual trauma is something that everybody, any gender, has experienced, and that this is really important work that we all do on ourselves to heal so that we don't perpetuate crossing other people's boundaries. And one of the best ways to do that is through creative expression, singing, dancing, writing, cooking, growing a garden, and meditating to have the consciousness and the awareness enough to know, okay, I'm feeling like this desire, this urge. Is this in integrity for me to act on it? If not, like, how do I channel this energy elsewhere?
Awesome.
Yes. And
Nice
how
recap.
about you? Do you want to do a summary?
Nice memory.
Thank you.
We are beings so sensible to pleasure and to pain. How much pleasure? Don't know. I haven't found a limit. How much pain? I also don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And we are beings in this reality, in this third dimension, that we desire. And that desire can hurt other people or can lead you to the greatest experience of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Or just to live life and not be afraid of loving life or to experience. Sometimes it will go bad, sometimes it will go good, but not being afraid of going out and experience love, connection.
Yeah.
And knowing that every one of us are capable of doing harm or sharing love.
Mm-hmm.
Always.
Mm-hmm.
And the decision is within us, but we can play with pain in consent, with
Mm-hmm.
love and
Mm-hmm.
creating a safe space.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you so much for this dialogue.
Thank you, Tielo. Yes. May all beings experience healing, transformation, alchemy of their pain to their pleasure, that we all can really enjoy the gift of life, because I continue to come back in all of the spiritual embodiment, all of the work, that ultimately it is such a gift to have a human life and to be able to experience
Thanks.
talking to somebody, trees, wind, bird, water, all, the gift of life is so sacred and is so precious
And so mysterious.
and so mysterious. And the beautiful thing that about doing inner healing work is I feel like I'm able to enjoy more of life, because I'm not constantly being triggered or, in my kind of pain body, so I really is possible to transform that and transcend that, so that we can be more present and we can really enjoy the gift of life.
I hope.
Mm-hmm.